Okay, today I would just want to give you a brief presentation on the subject getting feedback and being more creative. This is one of the Canvas individual questions that you have. And you may be going, well, we talked about being creative earlier on in the semester, and we did. Why am I doing it again? Well, the reason I'm doing it again is because senior design is coming up. All of you are going to have to do a senior design, and I believe I mentioned before you have two options in the EC department. You can come up with your own project, or you and a team of students can come up with a project, and or we often have requests from the mechanical and aerospace engineering department to send students over there, and so you can choose to work on one of their projects also. There are a few sponsored projects and projects for competitions in the EC department also. There are a few options, but the vast majority of students usually choose to work on their own ideas or to work on a project with a friend, having an idea together or a friend's idea. So that's the reason we're going to talk about this again. But the first thing I want to talk about is getting feedback. Feedback really helps us. When we go out into the workplace, it'd be nice to know how we're doing. Am I doing a good job? Am I satisfying my employer? Is what I've done on this design good? Is my work on this project acceptable? One of the things that happens in school is you get a lot of feedback. You're kind of immersed in feedback. You can get feedback from homework and exams and projects, and of course always useful comparing yourself with your classmates. You may get even more feedback than you necessarily want. Ultimately, at the end of the semester, you're going to get feedback in grades, so it's quite easy to obtain. You don't have to seek it. You don't have to ask for it. You don't have to do anything. Now the problem is there's a real dearth of feedback at work, and the projects you work on are a lot longer than a semester in general, and so you may be in the middle of a project, sort of there, feeling kind of lost and by yourself. Boss is a busy person. He's not able to just kind of constantly say, "Oh, you're doing well. You should improve in this area," stuff like that. There are yearly reviews, typical yearly reviews. They're kind of roundly mocked in industry as being less than useful, and a lot of times by the time a year has gone by, it's too late to really correct what you've been doing wrong in that year, and so they aren't considered to be uh, really useful. So what to do? What should you do in order to obtain feedback? And then the question that I have for you is, what are you going to do? What are you going to do in order to know whether the job you're doing is good or not at work? Well, this is a short presentation on this, but ask somebody. Obviously, if I want to know how I'm doing, I need to ask somebody. I need to find somebody to ask. And if you need more feedback, then obviously someone telling you you've got to hurry up, or you're too slow on this design piece, or you're holding up the group or something like that, which is probably a good idea to ask before those things happen. And if the occasional smile of your lead engineer or supervisor isn't enough for you, you need to ask for more. So there are some people you can kind of turn to. The one is the engineer assigned to be your mentor. Most companies these days will assign you a formal mentor in the group you're working in. So this person will be they're there to help you kind of understand what you need to do, and kind of telling you, well, you're taking this a little too long on this specific part, or maybe you ought to think a little more deeply about this. All those kind of things are jobs that mentors do. Mentor is usually an experienced engineer who will be able to lead you through the ropes. I want to just kind of, as an aside here for a minute, talk a little bit about most companies these days are very careful with new engineers. It's not like you're thrown into the frying pan immediately as you get there, and you better be producing, and you better be of complete worth of the company. There's a period of time in which companies understand it's going to take you to come up to speed. So don't get kind of caught up in this. Oh, I'm going to have to be perfect the first day. I'm going to have to know everything. Engineering is a broad and beautiful subject, as we talked about in that lifelong learning presentation. And so don't feel that you're going to have to be perfect on the first day. You're going to have time to come up to speed. They're going to give you assignments that you can handle. And of course, if you want to progress in the company, you'll handle more and more as time goes along. Okay, if you're also asking just a friendly coworker, this can, typically be a peer, someone who's about, maybe a couple of years in front of you. They will be more familiar with the experience that you're currently having. And so you can just talk to them. And an unfriendly coworker sometimes helps too. If somebody is willing to give you some honest feedback, that works. And as busy as your boss is, he's probably just pretending. And so go talk to him. Say, really curious about, how I'm doing and how I can kind of get a feel for whether what I'm doing is acceptable, whether I should be doing more of this and less of that, or something like that. Just ask them questions. Now, don't become an annoyance to your boss. Don't become dependent. Don't be needy. You need to kind of balance this. People have things to do. They have lots of other people besides yourself to deal with, and so try not to be the one who's always in there. And try to learn to balance these things. If you want feedback, the short answer here is ask. Ask for feedback. This isn't like school. There isn't going to be an exam. You're not going to turn in your design and somebody's going to say, "Oh, you got to be on that." You have to do. You have to be willing to ask for feedback on things. Okay, I want to talk about being more creative. Kind of shifting gears here. At the beginning of this class, if you'll recall, we talked about being creative. And we kind of talked about that creativity is a mindset. It's not necessarily an innate ability. In fact, I very rarely think it is. By a mindset, if it's a mindset and if you can learn it, then you can learn it. You can learn to be creative. And so some of the things we talked about in the first day of class was you become more creative by kind of taking in the world. You observe and you learn and you see the world around you, and you learn about diverse subjects. In my opinion, anything you learn is likely going to increase your ability to be creative. You're going to see things differently, and that's the critical thing. Observe and record problems and opportunities that you see every day, and so both problems, both opportunities. We talked about seeing things that bug you, seeing things that bug other people, hobbies, interests, just seeing things that would improve the world. All of those are things that you kind of can observe on a daily basis. And so observe and record. The record is the very important part of this, because if we just observe it, we'll forget it. And the other thing is recognize that not every idea you have is possible. I was watching a documentary on Elizabeth Holmes of Theranos. She was a young, bright person who really dazzled a lot of people and ended up committing massive fraud for an idea that was not possible. And part of the problem was she refused to listen to experts who were telling her what she was planning was not possible, even though they had a firm scientific evidence. So if multiple people say that it's not possible and you can't really prove that it's possible yourself, you might want to move on to another idea. But pursue those ideas that are possible. You might as well. It makes life more interesting. It's more fun if you're kind of thinking up ideas and figuring out ways to solve these problems. The second reason is senior design is coming, as I mentioned at the start of this. So I'm sure, since we talked about this at the beginning of the semester, that you're all keeping a list of your ideas. So, and the question I ask is, how are you recording your ideas? How are you doing this? You really are going to feel better about senior design if you've got a big list to choose from when senior design comes around. You can spend the summer observing problems, observing things that you think you could come up with a technical solution for. So start now, don't wait, and you'll be a lot happier come fall or next spring when you're going to be working on your senior designs. Okay, that's all I have for this one, and I'm going to be posting something on completing your design review. About all you have left for me in this class is your design review, and this is a brief presentation. I think the best way for us to do it is if you would just make a video of your slides. You can do it in the same way I've done this, where you don't have to show me pictures of yourself or anything like that. Everybody has to, in your group, has to in some way participate in the design review. And given the strange times, I don't want any of you worrying too much about this design review. It doesn't have to be super well produced or anything like that. It just has to convey some information, show that you've learned how to make some design decisions for various aspects of your project, and we're good. The other thing is you need to make sure that on your group homepage for the group projects, there is a file that represents your work on that project, on that piece. So if you've got a group assignment to hold a meeting, make sure your meeting agenda is up there. Make sure your various pieces of your specification are there, your final draft or your spec is there. Everything needs to be on that homepage. That's how I grade at the end of the semester, as I go through the files on the homepage. So make sure everything's there, and you'll be fine. I've had some questions about missed assignments on the individual questions and things. If you want to turn things in, you'll get some credit for that. So make sure you kind of go through that and do that. Hope everybody's safe and well, and I'll be presenting again soon.